What do you do when you receive a notice of reassessment? Hi, I'm Sunny Weiderman from Personal Tax Advisors with another tax tip for Canadians. Today we're going to talk about notices of reassessment. If you've been reassessed, you've received a letter like this one here. And generally what's happened is that you have filed a tax return. The Canada Revenue Agency has issued a notice of assessment, meaning sort of taken a look at your return or seemingly taken a look at your return and giving you an outcome. But now, a few weeks or a few months, or in some cases a few years later, they've come back to open up that old tax return again and change the outcome. They've made a change. Here's what you get. You've got this letter in front of you. What does it all mean? Well, let's start with learning how to read an assessment, learning what to look for. So the first place you're going to look is up in the upper right corner, where you're going to see your social insurance number and the tax year to which it pertains. The social insurance number, by the way, if it's not a social insurance number, if it's instead a business number, then you know that you're looking at either a corporate reassessment or a GST, HST reassessment. If it's your social insurance number, it's a personal income tax return. The next thing you're looking at is the tax year. So even if it's been a few years ago, the CRA can reassess older returns. So it's important to know which return they're even talking about. If you make certain changes that affect several returns, you're actually going to get a separate notice of assessment for each one. So this tax year tells you which tax return this assessment is referring to. Next, this is actually a change in just the last few years where the Canada Revenue Agency has put the most important information up top, which is to tell you what you need to pay them, if anything. And in this case, of course, there is an amount owing. When the Canada Revenue Agency sends you a notice of reassessment, that means that they're going to give you money. We tend not to hear as much about that. I mean, here at the tax office, nobody really calls us when they're saying, oh no, they're going to give me more money. But when the reassessment says something like this, which is that you have to pay us something, that's when we get a call. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is this: to avoid additional interest charges, you must pay by X. Now, some people look at this and they think that what it means is that there's some kind of deadline or some kind of hammer is going to fall if they don't pay up by the date that's shown on the notice of reassessment. But look really closely at that sentence. What they're saying is that to avoid additional interest charges, you need to pay by this date. The thing about the Canada Revenue Agency amounts owing is that there is a running clock on them. There is an amount of interest that is accruing, and it accrues every single day, which means that the amount that you owe the Canada Revenue Agency is actually always a moving target. It's changing as we speak. So what they do when they reassess you is they pick a date a little bit in the future, actually. They calculate the amount owing plus its associated interest, and they say, okay, this is the date that we've calculated this figure to. Pay us by this date, this is the amount you owe. Pay us after this date, and the figure is going to shift. It is in fact shifting all the time, but what they've done is take a snapshot for you to give you a sense of what you need to pay within a certain amount of time in order to clear off this debt. So if you agree with the notice of assessment, or you've decided not to contest it, or you've decided not to contest it right now, if you pay the exact amount by the exact date, you're done. If you pay a little later, they may send you a bill for a few extra bucks because of interest. If you pay a little sooner, they might actually give you a teeny bit of it back as a credit, because you may have overpaid if you pay this a little too early. The next place you really want to focus is on this list of numbers, this dual column of numbers. A lot of people sort of skip past this part because it looks a bit technical and it looks a bit daunting. You really have to look at this in order to understand what the notice of assessment is really about. It's important because a notice of assessment, like the notice of assessment in the first place, is not written in stone. It's not necessarily the final word here. And so you owe it to yourself to take a look at what they are saying with this notice of assessment to confirm that you agree and that you don't have an argument, or that you don't want to make an argument right now, because it's not always the final word if you don't want it to be. So we need to look at the reasons and what's going on. So this set of numbers is two sets of numbers from two different versions of the return. The left-hand column is the previous version. So this may be the version that you filed with or the most recent version that the Canada Revenue assessed for this particular tax year. And these were the figures for each of the important lines on that return. And then on the right-hand side, these are the new revised amounts. And what you need to do is compare the two columns, because some figures will still agree sometimes, and then you want to look at where they start to diverge from one another to see where the change has been made. Now, in this case, the change was made on the very first line. They did not agree with the amount of income that this taxpayer reported on their original return. Having looked a little closer, the Canada Revenue Agency seems to believe that there is more income than the taxpayer originally reported, and that is resulting in the tax bill. Down at the bottom there, you're seeing sort of the fallout. So up at the top is the difference in the income that they're assessing. Down at the bottom is the result of that change in income. They're saying that there's a little more income owed, there's some interest attached to that, and they're showing how it differs from the last return, and therefore what is now owing per this change that the Canada Revenue Agency has made. You can see the change. It's a change of income, but that's not the whole story, and you need to keep going. You need to keep going to this section right below the list of numbers, which is the explanation. So important. So many people get a notice of reassessment and they don't actually read this far. And it's kind of the center to everything is what's happened here. They're going to explain under this heading, closer to English rather than numerology, what's happened here. So in this case, the Canada Revenue Agency says that basically they've included income from another source. They feel that this is income that was not reported on the original return. They found a slip. They believe it should be included in income, and so they have added it to the income. They've explained it here actually in English. The question you would want to ask yourself if you got a notice of assessment like this is, did I include that income? If I did, I need to argue with the Canada Revenue Agency and say it was there. I don't know why you're not seeing it, but it was there. Or you might conclude that, oh, oops, I missed that. I did not report that income. And so then you don't really have an argument to make with them, but at least now you know why. Those are the key issues when you're getting a notice of assessment. These are the things that you need to be aware of. First of all, you need to be aware that the date that is provided there is not an end of the world deadline. It's just the date to which the interest has been calculated. So you can pay before that date, or if it takes you longer to liquidate the cash, you can pay a little bit later, but you're going to owe a little bit more. Just be aware of that. CRA's interest rate shifts with the prime rate, so it depends on when you're seeing this video what it is. Second thing you need to do is take a look at those two columns of numbers and compare one set to the next to identify where the change has been inserted into your return, and then definitely read that explanation to find out why they have made that change and decide from that whether you want to respond to this notice of assessment and ask for a review, or whether you want to just let it go, pay the bill, and move on. I hope that's helped you. I'm Sunny Weiderman from Personal Tax Advisors. I'm always here trying to help you demystify the Canadian tax system. If this video has been helpful to you, please like, subscribe. It helps my channel, it helps me, and it encourages me to send out more videos about the Canadian tax system. And I'll see you in the next one.